Thank you, Annie. And it was indeed a very insightful perspective that came from you. Thank you so much for such a lovely keynote address at ETAuto EV Conclave today. We have seen day one was very exciting, rich with great deep discussion around managing the transition. We also talked about how the passenger vehicle segment is going to pan out in the EV segment. We heard some of the stalwarts in the industry like Mr. R.C. Bhargava, Shailesh Chandra, Rajiv Chhawa, Mr. N.K. Minda talking about the challenges or the transition that will shape up in the supply chain space when it comes to electric vehicle. We also heard Dharmesh Arora. They all spoke on their respective subjects and we got a lot of insight from there. I hope day two is going to be equally exciting. Let me start with the first panel discussion of the day, that is around the low-hanging fruits on two wheels and three wheels. And we have a very exciting panel today. They are the leaders, or I can say movers and shakers in their respective segment of the business when it comes to electric vehicle. Let me introduce the panel that we have here on the screen today. Mr. Tarun Mehta, co-founder and CEO, Ather Energy. We are also joined by Mr. Mohal Lalbhai, founder and CEO, Mehta. We are also joined by Mr. Diego Graffi, chairman and managing director, Piaggio Vehicles Private Limited. We also have young and bright startup founder, Suhas Rajkumar. He is the founder and CEO of Simple Energy. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in this important discussion and understand how these two low-hanging area of EV is going to penetrate into the Indian market. What kind of volume are we looking at? What are the challenges that is being seen in these two segments and how these players are trying to address them? The theme of the discussion, just want to ascertain how much do you guys think that two-wheeler and three-wheeler is going to be the low-hanging, because we see in the three-wheeler space, we have seen that the retail numbers in the last month, like February, we had about 19,000 three-wheeler being registered, which were electric, compared to about 24,000, ICE engine three-wheelers that were dispatched. Though you look at the ICE engine three-wheeler market share has shrunk. We used to sell about 50,000 a month, which has come down to 24,000. But at the same time, we have seen there is a surge in terms of, electric three-wheeler, demand. So just starting with you, Tarun, how do you see this? Do you accept that two-wheeler and three-wheelers are going to be the low-hanging fruit in electric mobility space?
Well, I think everybody understands now that light electric vehicles are going to be the first changes in the automotive world. The total cost of ownership is far better. The technology and the product portfolios, technology is far more ready, and product portfolios are far richer in this side. And also the policy support is strongest here. More importantly, the customers' willingness to go for electric in these segments is the highest. I would say it's highest in the three-wheeler world and then followed by in the two-wheeler world now. So I wouldn't call it low-hanging fruit because—
Tarun, I'll just like to add to this question. Two-wheeler penetration has not yet, risen the way in the three-wheeler space. I know the volume is very huge in two-wheeler, but just want to understand what are going to be the enabler when it comes to two-wheeler. How are we going to see what are the enablers that will lead higher penetration of two-wheeler going forward? If you could briefly answer that.
Nabeel, I want to take a different stance now onwards. I don't think we need enablers, honestly. I know it's not the thing that a CEO should be saying. CEO should be asking for more subsidies, more support, more enablers. But I think we have enough enablers right now. I think the industry is selling 20, 30,000 two-wheelers a month, electric. And almost all of them scooters, which is already starting to look like 7-8% of the scooter market. The demand, however, is way higher. And it's not like higher by 20-30%. Almost every OEM that I know has at least a 50 to 100% high demand. In our case, we are only selling about, I think, 25 to 30% of our actual demand. And the biggest thing for us to sort of resolve is supply chain. Like the faster we are able to ramp up our supplier side capacities, if all of us could ramp up our supply side capacities 100%, I would guarantee right now, monthly electric two-wheeler sales would be north of 100,000, right?
Oh, that's
This,
great.
100%, 100%. The demand is that high. And it's not just in urban tier 1 markets, it's in tier 2, tier 3 markets. In fact, all our data tells us that tier 2, tier 3 demand is actually higher than tier 1 demand. On a per capita basis, tier 3 markets are buying almost 8 to 10 times higher than tier 1 markets. So it's a spectacular market. There is incredible amount of demand. There are no more enablers required. The only enablers required are domestic, higher domestic production. It kind of hurts the electric two-wheeler industry that we are seeing the biggest semiconductor shortage of our lifetimes at the same time when the industry is taking off, which is why volumes have been hamstrung for the last few months. But as this starts getting resolved, and all of us are seeing line of sight on that now, and as more cell production, local domestic cell production kicks in later this year, I believe very strongly that before FY23 ends, monthly electric two-wheeler volumes will be in the vicinity of about maybe 70 to 80,000 units. Demand will continue to obviously grow. It will be much higher than 1 lakh units per month, but supply is catching up pretty fast.
Okay, so as Tarun pointed out that all the enablers are already in place, and he sees that only the supply chain, hurdle that is holding up. Otherwise, he says that we would have been able to sell 100,000 two-wheeler in a month. That's what he says. Suhas, Mohan, and Diego, what's your thought? How do you see this? I start with you, Suhas.
Yeah, absolutely. There's enough traction now in the last 12 months, precisely to be, and the new subsidy that has come into the place has definitely given a lot of confidence to the consumer as well as the enablers or automakers who are venturing into this, EV industry much more in a much more faster way than ever it was. Because EV in India has been there since last 15 years, but there's no significant aspect to it to adapt, or because of obvious reasons, because it really was. Having said that, again, supply chain is a challenge. We have been working with on this front since last 2.5 years. It definitely needs some forefront strategy so that you don't mismatch your production and your demand, because supply is again a constraint. Demand is growing every month, and that'll become a issue going forward if we are not able to sort it out. Major part of that is semiconductors, being lithium prices going up, and the demand that is coming through for the cell manufacturers also is an issue, which is shown in our strategies as well, and our vendors have been talking about this very, very clearly. But again,
now Suhas, I'll go to Diego and understand from him. Do you agree with what Suhas and Tarun has said, that all the enablers are in place now? Only constraint remains to be on the supply chain side. Do you agree to that? And how do you think this challenge can be addressed, and how long will it take?
Okay. Good morning, Nabeel. First of all, good morning to all panelists and all the people connected. So thanks for inviting me today. Well, okay, few things before coming to the answer to your question. Talking mainly, making more specifically reference to three-wheeler. Okay, two consideration worth to do with respect to what you are mentioning. First of all, I do not think that three-wheeler electric is a low-hanging fruit, but in reality, it is already reality in the sense that the penetration of demand into total three-wheeler market, total three-wheeler industry now is already in the range of 7 to 10%, and is increasing rapidly day after day. So it has already surpassed the phase of low-hanging fruit and has become now a consistent factor contributing to overall demand of three-wheeler industry in India. The second consideration, respect to the figures that you are mentioning, respect to retail and deliveries, I think that those numbers that are coming from FADA are a little bit misleading, in the sense that it is true that demand of ICE has dropped dramatically respect to pre-COVID level. But it's also true that those deliveries of electric vehicle were, or three-wheeler in mainly three category were already there. And now we are simply registered. We are unstructured demand of vehicle that now is getting registered. So it's not that the penetration has increased at that extent. So if we talk about the three-wheeler on which, let me say, the L5, so-called L5 category, auto show or cargo vehicle, as I was saying, the real penetration in the range of 7 to 10%. Coming to the aspect of enablers, yeah, I think that all enablers are there. Now already the shift of customer to start thinking and considering three-wheeler and in electric version whenever going to adopt for a new vehicle or change the existing vehicle is already there. Subsidy definitely are helping quite a lot. I think that supply chain definitely is an issue. I agree, is the main constraint that we are having now in order to cater to the demand that we see from the industry. But I think that furthermore, in terms of enablers, some more clarity in terms of investment from any level for infrastructure of recharge. Depending if it is fixed battery or swappable battery, definitely is required going forward. And a little bit more of clarity when you go down the line in terms of policy application, because most of the times the hardware that we see that when going to single RTO, they do not have really how to handle registration of three-wheeler electric. These are two factors that I think going forward, along with the supply chain, need to be settled and solved.
Thank you, Mr. Graffi. Mohal, you heard Diego talking about some of the policy clarity and rural electrification and other areas of work that he thinks will further enable. What's your thought on this?
I'll first have to say that yes, all the enablers are in place. I would agree with everyone here on this call. I would like to kind of go a step further and discuss the idea that asking a supplier ecosystem to build from ground up or to scale up to the current supply constraint that is there is not going to be an easy affair. And that is where technology companies or product manufacturers will have to work hand in hand with the suppliers in getting the production up to speed. And specific point to what Tarun mentioned, that we are in the midst of the largest semiconductor crisis we've ever seen. And a lot of money is being poured in the semiconductor industry. And the question to ask is how much of this is for ramping up production versus how much of this is for the newer technologies that they are building out. And how do we as manufacturers kind of take that into consideration and bring that into a product? Yes, it's still focused on technology and supply chain, but at the end of the day, this is what is going to drive or reduce the cost of acquisition for electric vehicles. And that is the general goal in the long term.
Mohal, you are not only manufacturing vehicle, but you are also going deeper into the vertical. You are trying to build battery packs also. Why are you trying to go on to both sides? Because then are you going to restrict those battery supply to yourself, or you're going to offer to your competitors also? What's that strategy there?
So why batteries is a very simple conversation about performance, reliability, safety, and security. And you know, everyone who's ever built an EV from the ground up realizes that plug and play is not really a model that works because you do not have ownership and control over all the key elements that are going in. Linking back to the fact that interoperability of these technologies is still far, far away. The need of the hour is to get into these technologies. And for Matter, for us, the core building blocks of a battery pack that go onto a vehicle are the same for most other applications. And using that core tech strength is where we are truly enabling the ecosystem by providing battery packs outside.
Okay. Thank you, Mohal. Tarun, I'll come to you again and understand the recent development that we have seen on the political geographical scenario. You have seen Russia and Ukraine thing happening. That has led to a price rise of the battery or cell or cathode chemistry that we have seen. How do you think this is going to impact, especially the segments like two-wheeler, three-wheeler, which is very much, price sensitive? It is a
These
hurdle, or you think it is just a transient, a problem that is going to be, and it will be resolved very soon?
Nabil, it's transient because it's not like fundamentally nickel reserves have reduced. It's just that because there is chaos out there, everybody's panic buying a particular commodity, and hence that commodity's prices skyrocketed. But as we recently saw, with the first sign of a dialogue between the warring countries, or first sign of even like some sort of stability, prices immediately start dropping. It's just a market panic reaction. There's no fundamental thing that's changed in the supply chain. It may have an impact in the short term, but I think the large cell suppliers have deeper, longer term contracts that will likely prevent this from hitting them and hence getting passed on to OEMs yet. So my expectation is that unless this is an issue that continues beyond a month or two, and my expectation is that it may not. So my view right now is that it's unlikely to change cell prices right now.
Okay. So my next very important question: of late, we have seen some of the two-wheelers or electric vehicles catching fire. It happened in many cities, with many brands in India. I just want to understand, how are we going to ascertain this safety aspect of the battery and overall, architecture of electric vehicles? We see that there are different varied kind of weather conditions that we have in India. How are we going to bring that standardization, or that is, low cost innovation in terms of, the architecture of the vehicle or the battery, that is still, good enough to sustain or survive all weather conditions? And the other, you see some of the, roads, some of the geographies where we don't have proper roads, somewhere you have hills, somewhere you have different conditions. How are we going to ascertain that we maintain that safety levels? I'll start with you, Mohal, and then probably Tarun can join in.
Perfect. So the fundamental part about safety and reliability is we need to understand the Indian use case. I mean, we have weather conditions, we have grid conditions, and we have usage conditions. These are generally very unique across the country, and they may not fully be captured during the product development cycle. And that is something that needs to be addressed at its core. Once this understanding has been plugged in, the engineering is straightforward. Yes, it does come in with a few overheads, but then that is what this country requires at this point in time. We expect, to our knowledge, most of the fires have happened because of bad handling or improper usage, and education on that front and secondary protection from the product itself is going to go a long way in making sure these things never happen again.
Suhas, this challenge is going to have a larger impact on the newbies, younger players in the space. How are you trying to convince your customers that they take a better measure in this, or how are you trying to convince your customer in this front on the safety aspect?
Yeah, so see, again, battery safety is one of the major concerns every customer will have, obviously, because they are not much aware of how the development happens or what exactly the quality standards have been matched. Again, just to take a step back and just reflect on this, battery technology or battery safety is a concern where you need to really work on the fundamentals, right? Your thermal efficiency has to be optimum. Your terrain management, your condition management, your BMSs have to really work together, really understand where the thermal runaway happens, right? Apart from that, what safety parameters or what layers are you placing into the battery packs is one of the second phases that you can really look at. So having said this, convincing a customer is something that we have to really showcase our capability of traveling maybe 5 lakh kilometers, 10 lakh kilometers without having any problem, and assuring them of a warranty period that we are very sure of. as a maker, because if we don't show the confidence, I don't think consumer can really wrap their heads around this part of it. But again, everything in a EV starts with battery packs, and the core focus also has to be always on the battery packs, be it the phase change materials, be it the BMS, or be it any kind of thermal systems that you want to place in, and all security checks to place in, has to be the bottom line focus of a company, especially someone who's developing things from scratch. So this is where you can look at, and obviously as you use the vehicle, you'll have the surety of whether this will really go far or no, and what kind of R&D that has gone to the handling the chemistry itself. The lithium is a bit, again, a problematic thing to handle. You have to be very careful on that. It cannot be solved with a plug and play models or just a standardized battery pack. It has to have its own thesis, and it has to have its own development life cycle, and it has to be built on basic principles so that safety is met and quality is met.
Mr. Diago, what's your thought on it? How do you see this can be addressed? How big is this challenge?
I think, Nabeel, I think this is definitely very valid point, in the sense that somehow one of the biggest challenges of adoption of electric, both in two-wheeler and two-wheeler space in India, is the, how to say, discipline and culture of customer that have definitely to take some, how to say, some precaution whenever using an EV vehicle. Okay, I cannot comment on any of the cases that you mentioned, because I cannot say if it is due to misuse of a consumer or it is due to the bad quality of the battery pack. What I can say is that as far as our experience is as Piaggio, not only in India, but globally, because we are producing and selling electric two-wheeler and three-wheeler since more than 15 years as of now globally. We never had this kind of experience so far, and we follow very strict standard in terms of safety, because somehow you have also to prevent that customers are not using all the precautions that are required. So you cannot expect that whenever adopting a two-wheeler electric, you have to ask a customer to change his usage habits respect to what he was used to do when he was using an IC vehicle. Should be unfair. So I think that is the responsibility of OEM to ensure that the highest level of protection against any kind of lack coming from final consumers. And means that you have to adopt the highest level of standard available nowadays in the market. At least this is the philosophy that we are following, we always follow.
So Diago, I understand that this should be done, but just want to understand what is really being done to do that. But I'll come to this question once again. But before that, I'll take Tarun's opinion on this. And also additionally, Tarun, I want to understand, we have seen there's a policy in place now that, you can sell electric two-wheeler or any vehicle without battery. That enables that the swapping model can work here, or also can decrease the cost of acquisition for the end user of electric two-wheelers or three-wheelers. That will be a big, I think, driver for volume. Just want to understand how effectively, what are the innovation or technology, how effectively can we commonize these battery that they can be used for all kind of segment like two-wheeler or three-wheelers safely with right kind of efficiency.
Nabeel, I have an extreme view on this. I think it's a terrible idea to try and standardize batteries. You are talking about batteries purpose-built for individual electric two-wheelers right now catching fire in India. Imagine trying to build batteries for different OEMs, different models, different variants, and then being changed every day, connections being happening every day. I think it's a difficult job. Swapping has a role to play. Sure, in commercial purposes in particular, it has a significant role to play. But I think swapping of batteries has to be subjected to far stringent checks because of the kind of environment India is, the kind of usage it will go through. In a fixed battery environment like what most OEMs have today, even their batteries need a lot of care. But in a removable battery environment, I think the number of tests and certification needs to be definitely higher. Otherwise, the government risks creating a bad environment and possibly a lot of exposure for customers. with more batteries catching fire, with more bad handling of batteries. Secondly, standardization, would it help? It won't help at all. In fact, standardization works the other way around. If you want a safer battery, standardization does not help. Creating requirements for safety is help, right? So you need safety standards. You don't need battery standards, okay? You want to have, for example, standards around how much power it can manage, what kind of surge it can accept, what kind of electrical shortage scenario it can work in, all that good stuff, right? What kind of temperatures it can operate in, all that. You don't want to basically define this is what the battery shape should be. That does not help creating safer batteries.
Okay, thank you, Tarun. That's been a very candid opinion. So you are saying that safety standards should be brought in, not the battery standardization, and you think that the swapping is not a great, idea.
Mohal, let me clarify. Swapping is fine. I don't want to basically start a fight with the entire industry right now. I think swapping is fine. Please go ahead with swapping. I'm just saying, I think
checks and balance.
I think we need clearer and more tighter safety regulations. I think everybody and their uncle is trying to build swappable battery packs with any kind of a vehicle with like a 3-5 member engineering team. Building a swappable battery pack and infrastructure is one that requires, in my opinion, considerable investments and at least 3 to 5 years of consistent R&D behind it. Without that, we are walking into a trap. I think the government should insist for it in whatever way which is feasible.
Okay, so government should put more checks and quality parameters. Mohal, what's your thought?
So I definitely
think that this will be a big enabler for volume, and then you can give your opinion.
So I'll start with Tarun's statement, and yes, battery packs are currently not regulated in India, and that is a major point of concern. Regulatory, operational, tech-driven standards will definitely help, and they will at least bring everyone up to a, let's say, a minimum viable product, if I may. And from there, standardization for me is going to be the key enabler going into the future for India. And with subsidies going out, cost of acquisition will go up. And at that point, batteries which are interoperable will help reduce the cost of acquisition. But having said that, we also see a lot of benefit on the infrastructure side and the grid side coming in with swapping stations packed with batteries, and there is a lot to be leveraged out of this. But it stands to be seen how the policy is regulated, how is formulated, and how the industry overall is agreeable with the context moving forward.
Diego, what's your thought? You are already offering your 3-wheelers, if I'm not wrong, on swapping. So what's your thought?
Okay, let's take it this way. I think that when we are talking about regulation or standardization, we have to distinguish basically 2 levels. One level that is the kind of requirement, standard, the technical requirement that every battery pack that is used on any kind of vehicle in India is required to pass in order to get homologation. And think nowadays, I agree that is now in India is a little bit of a jungle. There is not so much of clarity. So some more strict regulation to avoid also those cases of catching fire that you are mentioning. And this is a clear demonstration that the regulation is not strict enough. It's definitely something that is immediately required to ensure that there is a minimum level of safety ensured to the final consumer. When we talk about standardization, standardization is mainly related to swappable battery model. I think is not a need, but is an opportunity in the sense that for sure, swappable model, as far as our experience is a huge opportunity to remove those 2 main roadblocks that are now, how to say, breaking the adoption of electric mobility, not only in India, but globally. That is range anxiety and price of acquisition. Swappable model is a fantastic solution for removing those roadblocks. But the point is that the infrastructure for a child battery swap are definitely much higher. The investment requires much higher. So a level of standardization in the sense that not telling every OEM that you have to say to use exactly the same kind of battery pack but at least that is a standardization of dimension, a standardization of connection, so that different kind of models coming from different manufacturers can be, let me say, recharged on the same battery station. This is the point of standardization of battery swap. If it is going to happen, I think that we are going to give a big boost in terms of economy scale to entire sector, and provided that there will be incentives specifically ruled out also for battery swap, that is not a reality as of now. I think that in perspective, battery swap can become definitely the main adoption and main driver for adoption of electric mobility in any kind of sector in India. This is at least my opinion.
Thank you, Diego. Tarun, do you agree at one point that battery swapping or selling of electric vehicle without battery can trigger the volume? Do you agree with this?
Nabeel, my very strong view is that you don't need more demand creation. The problem is not that there is no demand. The problem is that there is not enough supply. Whether you have discounts, whether you have more subsidies, whether you have battery swapping, whether you have whatever you do. I'm saying first, your biggest problem is that until for the next 2 years, there's not enough supply. So even if you do battery swapping, I don't think that is solving the problem of demand first. Next,
So
at
the two-wheeler industry, the volume was about 21 million at the peak of it 2-3 years ago. Now we have come down to about 15 million. And if you look at the two-wheeler, that is not able to, compensate for that kind of demand gap that has created, or the deficit has been created. So what is the problem? You still think only the supply chain challenge that has come up now?
No. I'm talking about electric vehicles. I'm talking about electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are still only 3 lakh units per annum.
Yeah, that's
I'm saying you're talking about overall industry. I'm saying swapping won't solve the problem of overall industry. No, swapping will solve can do something for electric vehicles.
What I'm saying, if the demand was there, electric vehicles should have, fill the deficit being created by a drop in the demand of ICE vehicle.
No, there is. No, we are not able to, because we don't have enough supply of electric vehicles. ICE supply is there. The petrol vehicle manufacturers can build 21 million vehicles tomorrow, but there is not enough demand for 21 million vehicles. And even if there is a demand of 21 million electric vehicles, let's say theoretically, I'm saying we don't have more than enough 3 lakh vehicles ka supply. So there's a big gap between 3 lakh ka supply and 2.1 crore ka demand or 1.5 crore ka demand, right? You have to first bridge that. I think you have to first improve your supply to 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million. And that point you will say, boss, now the entire industry is only 15 million. I want to grow this to 21 million. And that's where a lot of innovations will come. But right now the industry is able to produce 3 lakh vehicles. I think there's a long gap from 3 lakh vehicles to the overall industry volume of 2.1 crores.
Tarun, I also want to understand, I have seen a lot of startups talking about their capacity creation. By 2025 or 2026, I see all of your friends or the counterparts are proposing about 30 million units of capacity in the next 5-6 years. What's your thought on this? Even Suhas has a very huge, ambition in this direction. I'll understand from Suhas also. Tarun, first your take, then I'll go to Suhas.
I think, Nabeel, the right thing for EV makers to do is to think big. And we have to look at the overall two-wheeler market, which will completely go electric over the next 5, 6, 7 years. And we all have to invest in creating enough capacity to solve for that. My personal view, however, is that manufacturing capacity creation is cheap. It does not take a lot of money in electric vehicles to set up assembly capacity. I think the more complicated piece is creating supplier side capacities. Even today, Ather already has an installed capacity of 1.5, 1.8 lakh vehicles per annum. We are not operating anywhere close to that. We are not operating anywhere close to that because I think the biggest piece for us to solve is make sure our supplier is able to deliver that much, right? So I don't think it's wrong to create your own capacity and create large capacities.
How much of it we will be able to achieve? How much we will be able to achieve? How much idle capacity will be lying by? If you talk about 30 million units.
If we have 30 million tomorrow, then I think we'll be idle for a while because we don't have enough supply for 30 million. 30 million electric vehicles will need roughly about 100 plus gigawatt hour of annual cell production. To put in context, the Tesla Gigafactory, the famed Gigafactory, has 45 or 50 gigawatt hour of total capacity. So I think we are some way away from from solving a supply chain issues. I, however, don't see a challenge in chasing more capacities. All I believe is that's not the actual problem. The actual problem is supplier side capacities, not OEM side capacities. OEM side capacities are easy.
Okay, so how's your thought?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, coming to the same thing, that supply chain has to match up everything. So when we say volumes, when we say 12 million, 13 million, 15 million, or it can be 50 million as well combined. It is not about someone can scale or someone cannot scale. It is all about how can you match that scalability, right? And when we project something, it is just to give an idea or perspective that this market is growing rapidly, and there needs to be a set format set all across the competitors or even ourselves, that we need to really work together on the supply chain. Because today, if I speak of 20 million, I clearly know that I can serve the demand properly. Given the point, everyone wants to dominate the EV space, right? Every player here comes for that. No one wants to have a chunk of a percentage. Everyone wants to have a major percentage. But again, seeing India or seeing global, because you'll obviously look at export market as well, you need to have that capacity and streamline. And I want to take a step back and go back to the basics. When we start a R&D center or you start a company of an EV, you need to start working not only the product but also the supply chain. You need to work with the supply chainers and tell them that this is what I'm looking for next 5 years. And this is my plan of action. This is what we are doing. And this is what we are going to work in next 1 year. So you need to clearly define your 1 year plan, 2 year plan, 3 year plan, and accordingly adjust to the supply chain, rather than supply chain, giving you surprises at the end of the day, saying that, boss, I cannot supply you more than 50,000 pieces of this or 10,000 pieces of this, where your demand is 1 lakh or about that, where you'll have that mismatch going on. So every day you will have to work with them from not only understanding the product you're developing, but the kind of capacity they are trying to develop. At the same time, can you accommodate them in your park? For example, we are making a 600-acre property that we are looking to expand in, right, phase 2. So we are not only looking at our capacity, we are looking to get in suppliers who can work with us and build their own capacity so that we can match the demand that the market will project in next 3 years. So this is where
why do we need such a humongous capacity when we are still struggling at the base level when it comes to supply chain? Mohal, what's your thought?
So I do believe that there is a very good ecosystem of suppliers, and this, I believe, is a transitionary phase where suppliers who are traditionally into internal combustion vehicles are gearing up towards electrics. My take is that there are a few critical technologies which should always be controlled in-house by an OEM. And then the ecosystem needs to be supported from everything from the day we start design and development. Partners need to be on board, and working hand in hand enables smoother transition and better appreciation of the product that collectively is being made through a host of suppliers. Yes, capacity, going back to your original question, there is a lot of capacity that is being created. There is a supply constraint situation in India. I mean, the demand is there. Everyone's trying to run around and, get that piece sorted out. This problem will only be compounded when multiple models and multiple technology stacks start coming in across different products. And I strongly believe that working with the suppliers from day one is the solution to go into this. Until and unless somebody has grand plans of doing complete backward integration on the entire product.
Okay. Diego, your thought on this?
Okay, manufacturing capacity, supply chain. Okay, I reconfirm the fact that the main limitation, as far as at least our sector is concerned, is preparedness of supply chain for not only for the technology but also for the level of volumes that we expect to happen in the next couple of years. Manufacturing capacity, I don't think in the rural industry definitely is an issue, because there will be for sure an effort of substitution of conventional AC vehicle with EV vehicle. I do not expect that overall level of demand in the industry will increase consequently. And I think that in the mid-long term, the penetration, the enablers of penetration of electric into three-wheeler space are definitely very robust and are quite independent by the level of incentive provided by central local government. My stand is that for two-wheeler, the story is a little bit different because the boom of demand that we have seen of electric vehicles in the last few months is mainly driven by the huge level of incentive that are provided by central local government. So the question is, what is going to happen when this level of incentive will fade away? So when a customer will be asked to spend 30, 40, 50,000 rupee per vehicle, more than for the same kind of vehicle that he was buying when incentives were in place. So I think that no player now in India has the answer to this question. And I think that the point for two-wheeler is not to increase manufacturing capacity, but to drive down cost of the technology or think seriously of adopting, as I was saying, swappable model. Because it's the only way in which we think that we can protect the interest of the customer in the mid-long term. Because I think it's unfair to tell him that at a certain point in time, the vehicle is going to increase in terms of cost and price 30, 40% respect to before. So I think this is the big, area of concern that I see for making the penetration of electric into two-wheeler space structural and not just incidental as it is now.
Okay, thank you. I'll come to you, Tarun. I heard that everybody agrees to one point that huge demand is there in India for two-wheeler, electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers. And only challenge is of the supply chain. I think that needs to be addressed in next 2-3 years. I think that will be done very well, pretty well. I want to understand in that scenario, what kind of volume you look at for two-wheeler and three-wheeler by 2025 that we'll have in India. Tarun, let's start with you and then I'll ask others to join in.
Nabeel, I'm just going to be a little...
so you have everything ready now. You can...
Sure. I think, okay. So I just find it funny because we are struggling to accurately predict how much would you produce next quarter. And you want an accurate 5-year prediction. So I'm going to give you an optimistic prediction, right? Like what I think will happen if you are able to solve the supply chain problems, which obviously as a founder, I'm optimistic about. I think things will look pretty nice before this year ends. I think with new players coming in, there is enough attention, there's enough supply chain interest in general, and there are more suppliers coming in, waking up to the India electric story. I think things are starting to look better and better with every passing month. If that trend holds true, in my opinion, the vast majority of the scooter market will 100% go electric. Vast majority of the scooter market will go electric. By that I mean, I believe by 25, the scooter market should be somewhere in the range of about 8 to 9 million units per annum. And I think the vast majority of this should be electric, 5-6 million, maybe even more. I think on the motorbike side, we'll still be at an early stage, but given the size of that market, even early stage might end up meaning 1 million or 2 units, if not more, right? So I think 6, 7, 8 million units could be electric by 2025. The market is very much there, but it does require some incredible wins on the supply chain side. I'm optimistic about it, but it's not in the bag. It's not in the bag. I think it's our work.
Thank you, Tarun. Suhas, what's your thought? 5 to 8 million two-wheelers to be electrified in next 5 years, 3 years, sorry.
I think yeah, number is close to that. 10 million is what we were internally projecting it to be. Given the point that how the market is growing last 1 year, it has gone 2x, apparently, and it's still growing every month. It's not slowing down. So 10 million is what we see by 25 for sure. But again, can we match the demand is one thing that needs to be sorted out because of supply chain constraints. Because every cell manufacturer today is trying to figure out their capacities, and we need to give them some time to figure out their capacities because everyone projected a certain kind of growth. We are always been saying this, that the growth precedence is set by the product and not by analytics or data points. It is purely on the customer and what the product you're offering in the market. And now that everyone is really wanting to know about what EVs are, cell manufacturers are struggling to supply. At the same time, other components like semiconductors and things are also trying to figure out the volumes. So if the supply is sorted out, I think 10 million is a good to go number by then, and will surely all the automobiles work together to match the demand.
Mohal, what's your thought?
So I believe very strongly that by the end of this calendar year, supply chain issue would have eased out to a far extent. All the pandemic-driven issues would have sorted themselves out. The PLI schemes which have been put into place by the government would have started taking force. By 25, I think we would have been far away from the supply chain issue. At that point, I believe that the conversation is going to be down to product offerings and what are the choices that are in front of a customer. If that is solved, I would agree with both Tarun and Suhas on their projections. I would go a step further and say India does move on motorcycles, and we are quite optimistic and bullish that we'll be able to drive that market fast as well.
Diego, what's your thought for specifically three-wheelers? We had about 600,000 market for three-wheelers in ICE. How do you see this? Yeah.
Realistically, I think in the span of the next 3 years, we can think that, as I was saying, penetration of EV into total industry that with substitution will be in the range 20-25%. So I do not expect that overall the two-wheeler industry in electric will be, both cargo and passenger, will be more than 1.5 lakh per year. This is at least my assumption. For two-wheeler, I'm a little bit less optimistic. Provided that incentive will continue, my personal expectation that will be in the range of 1 to 1.5 million vehicles per year within the next 3 years. Not more than that.
Also, I want to understand, Diego, retrofitment, will this work? Because the cost will be very high in three-wheeler also, and two-wheeler I see very little chance. What's your thought? Do you think it will enable the volume?
No, I don't think that retrofit anyway is going to be a solution for multiple reasons. First of all, as you mentioned, the effect of cost. Definitely the cost for the final consumer will be huge, and there is no policy of incentive now for retrofit vehicle. Plus, there are a lot of aspects related to safety. And let me say, so how you can ensure that the vehicle that you are handing over to the customer after a retrofit is satisfying and fulfilling all safety requirements and all the other regulatory requirements that are. We have been evaluated, obviously, a retrofit, but we have discharged that as a possible solution. I think it's totally unviable from technical and economical point of view. It's much more convenient to go for a brand new electric vehicle. It's much more convenient for the customer and much more safe.
Tarun, we have seen some of the state governments have rolled out policy for retrofitment. I personally feel that there's no, scope of such, arrangement. What's your thought?
I agree with what Diego said. I think retrofitment, especially in case of a two-wheeler, is difficult. It's time consuming, and more importantly, I think automotives are complex animals. Like just to recreate the assembly that you can get at the factory, just at your dealer end again, is like a nightmare, right? Now to expect that a retrofit operator can sort of manage retrofits of different OEMs, different models. Forget different OEMs, different models. Even the same OEM assembling different generations of the same product over like 5 years. Even that's complicated. Like just backward compatibilities and just tracking your 1,000 different components across 5 different generations is not super easy. So I think retrofitment is difficult. I think there might be opportunities in limited segments in commercial vehicles.
Yeah,
that too maybe. But I think for the most part, at least in two-wheelers, which is the only industry that I have some understanding of, I think retrofits are a difficult thing to pull off and definitely far more costly. Like the economics of doing something centrally as an OEM are just So radically different than trying to recreate that at a retrofit level is not feasible.
No, quality wise also for any segment, it will be very difficult, because cost will be very high, and the body quality and the parts and all that will be compromised a lot. So I don't think equally that for any segment, except for the large vehicle where the body build cost is high, there could be some possibility, but I don't think it is going to be a possibility in two-wheeler or three-wheeler. One very important aspect of the electric vehicle when we talk about increasing the penetration is the residual value. We see recycling becomes very important, or retrieving these raw materials in a battery is an important aspect. What is the work happening in this direction to ensure retrieving of the raw material is maximized, or the cost of reproducing these batteries, dual cost of vehicle is increased or intact? How are we going to do that? I'll start with you, Mohal, and then I'll ask Ather to join.
So recycling is going to be definitely important. The lithium that's currently being imported needs to stay in the country for the true value of that metal to be extracted. There are conversations around second life applications of battery packs used for energy storage, which is, with the right kind of data coming in from the battery packs, is something that can be looked into. But today, it's quite a big haze on how that would actually pan out. Again, going back to swapping or standardization as a concept, it will help this entire conversation around residual value a lot, as the concentration of players who are into swapping or swapping operators will be limited. The onus of swapping and getting that material back into the system is going to be much easier. And at a macro level, yes, there is a lot of conversations that are happening in India around recycling. But there is still a lot more that can be truly done, considering the chemistries and all the kind of compounds and materials that go into making lithium ion cells, segregating those, refining them and putting them back into use again. As far as resale value of an electric two-wheeler is concerned, is something that has been a point of concern for consumers. And that is where, from an OEM standpoint, using these products in the future, having an integrated buyback and then mobility as a service as future options, these avenues are open. But unfortunately, not a lot of vehicles with new cell chemistries have reached their end of life stage. So it's still to be tested out. There are opportunities on how this thing can pan out, but there are a lot of things that need testing and validation on the ground.
Thank you. Tarun, your thought?
I'm a big believer that economics are in favor of recycling, and I think that's why it will be driven by entrepreneurs. If you look at an average battery pack in a scooter today, it has raw material worth some, like just the cost of metal and commodities in it is somewhere between almost 15 to 20,000 rupees. Or maybe I'm overestimating it, but at least on the lower end, 12 to 15,000 rupees, right? So the salvage value is incredibly high. We've seen how strong the recycling industry has been with things like lead acid batteries, where given the high salvage value, and in this case, lead acid batteries is much smaller, an incredibly tight network emerged throughout the country, and recycling of lead acid batteries at the rate of about 97, 98% or even higher. I think we'll see something similar and even stronger, because here the recycling value is way higher. We're already starting to see companies now emerge, startups now emerge, which are able to take this scrap metal back and unlock a lot of value out of this. It will only accelerate. This I'm very, very optimistic about. I think recycling will take a massive life of its own and will be a very, very large industry.
Thank you, Tarun. Suhas and Dial. Suhas, what's your thought?
Yeah, see again, there's an ex-CTO of Tesla who built his own startup for recycling, and now he supplies to Panasonic. Panasonic gives back Tesla. So definitely recycling in working on the unit economics for this industry going forward, and lithium price will come down eventually. And having said that, recovery is close to 97% of those cells, and again, it can be or any form factor, doesn't have to be swappable or anything else. It is all about how you manage that and what is the end life and how exactly it's coming back to the procurer, and how it's been processed and sold to a cell manufacturer. Or even in EV companies can go forward and set up recycling plants themselves. Maybe not now, in 3 years time, 3 years down the line or 5 years down the line, when the volumes are huge, when most of the electric vehicles are coming to the end of life. But again, degradation also is one factor where safer battery packs or better built battery packs don't have higher degradation, typically not more than 5%. So all these factors will come in, and it's gonna definitely be a market of itself, an industry of itself, which will help not only save planet and reduce mining on that part, but at least make electric vehicles more sustainable and much more cost efficient in the next coming years.
Thank you. Now we are running out of time. One last and final question, and I just need 20 seconds comment from all of you. Just want to understand how the customer experience, because that's very important. What are the technological innovations like connectivity and all taking shape that will enable further volume in electric vehicles or electric two-wheelers or three-wheelers, that can become an attraction for the EVs in this space? Mohal, what's your thought? And then everybody in just 20 seconds.
So a smart connected experience is what people have started expecting over the last 2 years. And two-wheeler industry as a whole has never really provided a seamless experience. Yes, the customer is, looking forward to these experiences. And I believe that experiences are going to drive product selection in the future.
Okay. Diago, your thought?
It is clear that any customer who is buying electric two-wheeler or two-wheeler is expecting the best of technology and the best of features applied. So definitely smart connection, connectivity, Bluetooth integration with mobile is something that now going forward is going to be a must, along with TFT technology for cluster, touch, screen, and these kind of factors. I think that going forward are going to be a must in every sector.
Tarun and Suhas, how are you taking this to the next level beyond just Bluetooth and all? Yeah.
I think, Nabeel, electric vehicles, for them to truly win, they will have to come out as an upgrade over petrol vehicles. They have to feel like a petrol upgrade. It's definitely there in better connectivity features, but it'll have to seem like not a minor improvement. It'll have to seem like a immense improvement, right? That you can't come back to a petrol vehicle ever after. I think we'll need to see incredibly fast, either super fast charging. I'm talking about 5 or 10 minute charging speeds, or we'll have to see an incredibly robust and successful fast swapping network, right? One of these two. We'll have to see connectivity features implemented at a very different level of detail than where the industry is today at. And I think the entire journey of not just purchase, but even resell and upgrade into the next model, becoming very seamless with connected vehicles. I think there are 3 opportunities that I think will make electric really stand out compared to its petrol counterparts.
So, Has your quick 30 seconds comment.
Yeah, so quality, value for money, smart, connected, and safer. This is what 4 things that we look at, and of course, it has to be incentivized. Customer needs some incentive to shift from an ICE to EV, and it's human psychology. You'll always like to upgrade and buy the same thing at the same price. So the price might be a bit different, but you get better quality, better product, and better experience. And end of the day, EVs are the future, and they'll only show what performance is like and quality is like, and that's what we also believe in, and that's what the product is supposed to be.
Thank you so much, Mohal, Diago, Suhas, and Tarun for joining us today at ETAuto EV Conclave and discussing all aspects of two-wheeler and three-wheeler. What are the challenges in terms of when we look at higher penetration of these 2 low-hanging fruits in the electric vehicle space in India? Thank you so much once again.